Have you ever heard, I say, have you ever heard of feminist standpoint theory? I've left links in the low bar so you can read about it yourself, but believe me, it's a heavy read. But that's because the authors tend to obscure with their writing instead of clarify, and they obscure because the things they say are total nonsense. Okay, so feminist standpoint theory is one of the three major branches of feminist epistemology, and the three major branches are feminist standpoint theory, feminist empiricism, and feminist postmodernism. Now, feminist standpoint theory came from second-wave feminism, where the master-slave narrative was very popular. Now, feminist standpoint theory carries the notion that knowledge is a social construct, and it particularly derives from the concept of a situated knower. That is to say, a lock, for example, a door lock, can be seen as an inconvenience to a thief, but an artifact of security to a homeowner. Depending on who you are, changes how you see the world. So that's the notion they start with. Now, with men and women, feminist standpoint theory says that women are oppressed by men, so women experience both the lives of women and also the lives of men, because women are coerced into the lives of men. So, therefore, women have two socially constructed minds. Held up 2 fingers on each hand, so whatever. Two socially constructed minds. And feminist standpoint theorists from that point on say that women are epistemically privileged. Yes, they use those words, epistemically privileged. So let's see what feminist standpoint theorists, the two-brain binary bitch army, has to say. Two-brain binary bitch army. Is Rob Zombie still doing movies? Now, in Marxist standpoint theory, the proletariat are said to be privileged in that same respect. Not privileged in any other way, but the notion is that the proletariat are more interested in objective humanist values because they're oppressed and exploited and what have you. So, the bourgeoisie, by contrast, are those that are people that don't have to worry about any of it because they're privileged. So, swap out bourgeoisie and proletariat for men and women respectively, and you end up with a feminist standpoint theory position on this subject. So, what's interesting about all this is it creates a kind of a paradox, and one of the biggest critics of feminist standpoint theory is not anti-feminist, but rather other feminists from different branches of feminist epistemology. So there's Helen, I think her name is Helen Lonino from Feminist Empiricism. She writes that if what you're saying is true, feminist standpoint theorists, then ethical knowledge can only exist if and only if sexism exists. And to clarify on this, we have to understand the Marxist idea of equality. The feminist Marxist idea of equality is that all defined classes in society have to essentially collapse, and everybody can see universal ethical claims without looking at them from the standpoint of a class. Everybody can see the world through both a classless and yet still kind of proletariat worldview. It's kind of weird. But the criticism from feminist empiricism says this can't happen because oppression is used as a premise. That is to say, the minute that women can be said to no longer be oppressed, their credibility vanishes. The collective standpoint that gave them this epistemic privilege dissipates, leaving what? Nothing, really. I think this is just funny. For one thing, it's non-falsifiable. This is a totally normative doctrine. In feminist standpoint theory, you have to be a victim to be credible. And this is set up such that if you end up not being oppressed, it follows that you cannot have credibility in an ethical discussion. And this is why those who identify with feminist standpoint theory would look to men and say, you're a man, you don't understand because you're privileged. That is an argument that feminist standpoint theorists are all about. If you have privilege, if you are said to not be oppressed, you don't have credibility. So women, if they want to remain credible, they have to keep themselves oppressed. And I say themselves, it's a requirement to be oppressed if you want epistemic privilege. That's how the thing is set up. It's so stupid. I would pay money to watch a feminist pitch feminist standpoint theory when she's incapable of pulling punches.
You need to accept that men are the total oppressive patriarch that they are, and that women, we don't have it so good. We could strive for this thing called equality. We don't really know what it is, but once we get equality, we're not going to be oppressed anymore. Yay! But we don't really know what we're talking about at that point, so we kind of have to stay oppressed in order to make any sense.
You're seeing feminist postmodernists coming in and saying, okay, you're nuts. So feminist postmodernists essentially say, you know, you're lumping all women together. There are so many different women out there with so many different experiences and all that, we cannot really define a solid scope of oppression, which makes sense. You cannot define a solid scope for oppression for any one demographic. This is a very nebulous deal. Hatred is something that everyone experiences. Oppression is something that everyone can experience. Bigotry, all that. But to try to define a model where you can measure it reliably? Not really. Everybody gets a fucking oppression score, and then Congress sets budgets according to that. Oh my god, I can just imagine. Imagine they had like a bar with a bookie where they're taking bets on who would get to increase their score the most. You go down to the fucking corner pub and they got C-SPAN on. There's a big crowd around the television set. It's just a melting pot. The bar keeps losing it. The odds are 3-1, 3-1, 3-1. Here comes Senator Melty-Face on the floor. Oh, she's crying, she's crying. Yes! Women have gone up 10 points. 10 points, ladies and gentlemen. 10 points! Pay up, bitches! God damn it. It's hard enough to deal with this shit when it isn't formalized. So, the reason that postmodernists had an issue with feminist standpoint theory in this respect is that the feminist standpoint theorists say that from the situated knower concept, women, by nature of being women, have similar experiences, and because they have shared situated knowledge, they can be described as a collective, and therefore a class. Make of that what you will. Now, I encourage you to read up on feminist standpoint theory yourself, and feminist epistemology for yourself, because this sits near the roots of what makes feminism feminism. This is in academia. This stuff gets published in journals. So criticizing this can do some major structural damage if the criticisms go through. How could this criticism go through? Well, if you're a student, you can go knock on the door at the social science department, talk to a few professors, and see if you can find anyone that either endorses the same information posted in the academic journals, or who disagrees with it but can't get any of their stuff through. That would be some interesting stuff to record. Just putting the idea out there. Thanks so much for watching. Victor Zen out.